a couple of years ago, I was traveling in one of the southern states, visiting the head of a Health and Human Services department of one state. In fact, we were touring and visiting multiple heads of states, Health and Human Services. My team, prior to MindBody, we built a machine learning and AI platform for the healthcare industry. One of it is opioids analytics platform. Opioids abuse is a national crisis, so these heads of state were very interested in how machine learning and artificial intelligence can make effective recommendations and interventions specific to three types of personas, people. One, the citizens who are misusing or abusing opioids, which runs into millions, and the doctors who are problematic prescribers of such medication, and the pharmacies which have become pill mills and prescribing opioids irresponsibly. So the director's question to my team, to me, was that, look, there are several thousands of people that are potentially abusing opioids, and I know that they're crossing state lines, and my team would love to know a recommendation and a set of interventions for those citizens who are potentially pregnant, because that is a heightened risk. And today, his team, his chief medical officer, statistician, head of nursing, their teams have to manually go through the patterns and signatures and identify the couple of hundred potential high-risk pregnant ladies, in this case, who need interventions of a particular kind. This was the problem. That is what he needed to use his limited dollar that he has effectively in his program. Yeah. In this country, about 40% of all healthcare spending goes waste, inefficiency, fraud, waste, and abuse. 58% of all food that is produced and consumed is wasted in this country. 1 trillion gallons of water goes to waste, and more than half of electricity that we produce is also wasted. Yeah. So personalization, which is the topic that we are discussing today, can help contain that waste and inefficiency. If I can advance to my next slide. Kiran, and there we are. So personalization is an advanced form of a recommendation. It is a core technology within the evolving machine learning and artificial intelligence field. That is what I'm presenting on today. MindBody is leveraging that same technology for proactive healthcare. That is helping individuals to take better care of their fitness and wellness, which prevents them from being sick. And the way MindBody enables this, one of the ways, is through a platform that is focused on wellness services. It's a marketplace that matches hundreds of thousands of fitness and wellness beauty service providers on the left-hand side, millions of consumers who need such kind of services on the right-hand side, and uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and regular software engineering for what is called matchmaking in this industry. So wellness is people proactively pursuing activities in service of their health, their fitness, and then beauty, well-being generally. There are 7 aspects to this. They are social, emotional, physical, occupational, intellectual wellness, spiritual wellness. So it expands into a large data structure like that. About 5.3% of global economy is today spent towards wellness and fitness. It is a $4.6 trillion economy and evolving rapidly. And this is a parallel view of what is happening in this digital marketplaces. The world of e-commerce is prominent. We know Walmart.com, Amazon, Google, and so forth, for-profit companies. But there is a whole not-for-profit, public sector, NGO sector, governments, which are also very active in using technologies like this, recommendation engines and personalization for better efficiencies and serving populations in a better way without so much waste, which I mentioned earlier. So this science technology is useful broadly in multiple sectors of the economy, including non-profits and government. $4.5 trillion in this AI-focused e-commerce and digital platforms, and it's rapidly growing. A lot of people are using mobile phones for consuming these kind of digital services, and also they're increasingly using devices like Alexa, Siri, and Google Assistant. They are also using social services for conveniently consuming these experiences. So about 50% of all shoppers, more than that, say that they would really like personalization if it is meeting their intent properly. And by 2022, about 120,000 such digital marketplaces will be using augmented reality. That is even beyond the recommender systems that we know today. So that is what is happening in the for-profit sector with digital marketplaces. And governments, as I already mentioned, are increasingly interested in this. 20% of world governments are using this kind of platforms, and about more than 40% of leaders say they are satisfied with the efficiencies that they're deriving, and so on. So the goal for this session today is to go through the fundamentals of personalization, how it is different from just recommendation or search or information retrieval, what are the business cases for it, and what are the core algorithms for achieving personalization in 3 different kinds of marketplaces. The reason why society is so interested in personalization is that for consumers, almost 60% say they're liking the personalized experience because of 2 things. This is a study at University of Texas, Austin. One is it addresses information overload, just too much out there, and I'm looking for a very specific thing. How can you help me? The second one is desire for control of the service consumption. Whether it is a product or service, you would like to be in control of what is offered to you, how you purchase it and consume it. These are the reasons why people like it. It helps vendors because they want to satisfy CSAT, customer satisfaction, retaining the customers, brand loyalty, revenue, for all of those reasons. And then public sector is interested because, back to my anecdote from one of the southern states, government has limited resources, they need to serve large populations. How can they target that service? Personalization has great promise there for efficiency. So here, 2 sisters, Lucy and Sarah. On the left-hand side, Sarah owns a yoga studio, no children, and connects via Apple Watch. That's how she likes to conduct her experience of consuming a service. Lucy is more like an executive VP finance, travels often with children, and many hours on her laptop. Yes. So there is a context around what they want, what they need, where they are while they're looking for that product or experience. All of that needs to enter into how we engineer and build these personalization systems. There is what is called intrusiveness on the negative side. If the system is nosing too much into your privacy space, knows a lot about you, that becomes bothersome. There is a whole body of science that is evolving, and law as well, California leading, that is trying to protect consumers and other entities' interests like that. On the positive side, trustworthiness. If a person trusts a brand, a platform, a digital marketplace, or a governmental service, just instinctively it reduces your cognitive burden. So you like it, you go back there and consume that service or experience. Now, there is what is called depersonalization. That's what the caution that I'm showing there. If you do the personalization wrong as machine learning AI engineers, it can have some disastrous consequences for the platform, the brand as well. That is, they will just get disgruntled and leave, right? And more, then you get bad reviews and all that. So that is depersonalization. It is consumers or merchants on your platform getting disgruntled because they're not meeting the goals. Your platform is not meeting their intent. That is depersonalization. The positive side of it is called virtuous cycle of personalization. There are multiple scholars that are increasingly investigating this. J.D. Adamowicz from University of Minnesota is a leader in this space. This professor and his students and colleagues have done some very helpful work. If you want to start somewhere and want to understand this deeper, those papers, that work would be a good place to start. So the definitions of personalization are, as I'm showing, there are several definitions like that. So if the platform is paying attention to the preferences and behavior of the individual consumers, and really by extension all stakeholders, the merchants, the sellers, the individual small businesses, yes, and then customizing that service journey. There are 11 steps in a typical product or service consumption journey. If you can customize that and specify that, targeting the individual's intent and their context also. Then if you are targeting customer loyalty, which is a longer term goal than one purchase this evening. So those are the aspects of how you define personalization systems and their goals. So context is at the heart of building these personalized platforms. Recommendation is one prominent way of personalization, but there are other methods also. I'll get into that in a little bit. Now, context, there was research about it in various sciences. Here is how it is defined. The consensus is broadly like this. You have an entity in the world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, individuals, consumers, but products, cars, and so forth is an entity. And there is an individuality about it. There is an activity that a person, in this case, has done, likes to do, the relationships they have. So it maps to who you are, what is the type of activity that you generally do, and specifically in this context of consuming a service, what are you up to right now? And then where are you? What is the device's IP address? Are you in a particular location? A type of a place, a cafe or a bookstore? Are you at an event like a sale? Are you in some kind of a difficulty, a natural disaster, that sort of thing? And when, the time zone, the concept of time, and events, intervals, and relations too. How are you related to the platform, the product, others who are on the platform, in the community, all of that, right? So that defines your context. Machine learning engineers among us, you can imagine how this expands into a data frame, a structured data set along all those 5 dimensions that I just now explained. Yeah. So now, types of personalization systems here, broadly 3 types. One is what we are familiar with, provider-centric, Amazon.com, for example. The yellow squares there that represent the consumers, the end users, and the platform, that is the provider. And the orange block in between, that is the personalization system. That is what is using artificial intelligence and machine learning. In case of provider-centric systems, there is one provider, Amazon.com, Walmart.com, Target.com, or an e-governance panel from a government, one provider, and they're serving many individual consumers. In case of consumer-centric one, it is kind of flipped on its head. It is called e-butler. That is, you are the user, you are the consumer. There is an agent or an application which is the personalization system that is on your phone, your device, and it is doing work for you, not the seller, and it's going into searching the ecosystem and finding what you need. That is e-butler. And there is the third one, that is market-centric personalization system. This is what MINDBODY runs and manages. It's the largest one for this wellness, fitness, beauty industry sector. Here, it's more complicated than the other two because it's kind of like eBay for wellness, fitness. On the left-hand side, you have many hundreds of thousands of providers of, in this case, fitness, wellness, beauty, salon, spa, yoga, those kind of services, and millions of consumers who are individuals who are interested in those types of services on the right-hand side. What is done is called matchmaking. That is what personalization system is doing in that particular case. So that's a taxonomy. And this is something that Adam Moshwitz also insists on. That is, it is not a static process. Personalization is an iterative process for you to get this right. Yes. So 3 blocks of activity there: understanding the consumer, delivering a personalized offering that is matching that intent, and measuring the impact of personalization, feeding back. That is also the point. Feedback back to the platform so that in the spirit of true machine learning, the platform is learning and trying to get its personalization match in a better and better way. Yeah. So collecting data from multiple sources, and we build what are called personalized user profiles and personalized provider profiles. It's because of the third platform. Personalized user profiles are all about context: who you are, where are you, what are you likely looking for, and so forth. But it's not a static profile. It is static part plus a dynamic aspect to it. Who are you this morning at 10:30? Right now, if I get a marketing email or even something, a big sale that I'm usually very interested in, right now I don't want it. You don't want it, right? There's a context around the whole thing. This is about PUPs and PPPs. Similarly, the merchants are there with their goals too. It's not a non-profit that the platforms are running. They are there to offer a service of value and make some profit too. So as infomediary, that is this marketplace in the middle, has to optimize among the interests and intent and needs of both the sellers and the buyers too, of both the government and the consumers also. That is also a key goal. That is matchmaking. You can use recommender systems, but we can also use statistical prediction and rule-based systems, expert systems, search and retrieval-based information systems. You could combine them creatively to meet your platforms and your customer and consumers' design goals. Yes. So how you deliver these, typically lists and recommendations, but also visualizations, unordered alternatives, or ranked ordered lists of recommendations. And then there are interventions too beyond recommendations. For healthcare, that is what we built also. Yes, you're recommending, but based on the recommendation, can your platform do something for the users, something for the consumer, something for the vendor, the merchant? Hey, you're losing money like this because you're not satisfying this constituency of customers. Here is the 3 interventions that you should do, and I'm going to automate it for you. Now that is into robotics and artificial intelligence. So these systems are capable of evolving towards such automation as well. Then you need metrics. To begin with, they are typical accuracy metrics of machine learning, but then they grow into user lifetime value, loyalty value, experience, customer satisfaction. Sometimes there is a trade-off among them. So they're not all evolving in the same direction together. So one has a trade-off with the other. So you need to be optimizing for that. Here, continuing with this, an example, Daniel is purchasing on Amazon.com platform mystery detective fiction Da Vinci Code. That's for himself. Or Green Eggs and Ham a gift for his daughter. Python programming, but for work, not at home. So see how context is determining that same Dan making 3 very different purchases. If you combine all of that into just one static personalized user profile, POP, and then you would mistakenly, your platform would think that Dan really likes green eggs and ham, which he just bought it for his daughter, right? So it starts there and then evolves into very nuanced, context-specific, personalized user profiles. So here's a table. This is from one of JD's students, Mobashir, who is also a professor in this field. So how should we represent Dan's interest in books? So the system needs to know context, both the static context and the dynamic context, but the context is not always fully observable. Even why talk about digital marketplaces and all that? If you're a parent and you're trying to feed your kids dinner, their intent is not always presented to you, and you make certain assumptions and make them dinner. They come home and they say, I already ate, I thought you knew, I don't want this dinner. That's how food gets wasted. Or they say, I told you I don't like this dish, misunderstanding and all of that. So simple situations like that can be challenging. How do you know, how do you observe context? So it is either fully observable or partially observable or not observable at all. And then you need to, artificial intelligence, this happens too. Robot doesn't always know what all is going on in the world, and it just makes based on certain beliefs, certain assumptions, and still gets it right most of the time. Yeah. So similar algorithms are necessary here for getting the context about the consumer or the user correctly. So I mentioned POPs, and how do you extend the personalized user profiles beyond the basic demographic that we know? Here's how: rules, sequences, and signatures. Rules are, say, John Doe prefers action movies on weekends. That's an additional rule that you're injecting into your usual collaborative filter recommender systems. Sequences are, John's visit to a book website, XYZ, went to start page, then home and gardening, and then he exited. That kind of a sequence is an additional information richness for you to build your POPs in a better way. Then signatures are statistics-based data structure. You can mine for signatures, that is, top 5 most frequently browsed product categories over the past 30 days for a particular individual, like that, right? So the key goals of personalized systems need to be focused on developing your own good metrics for your platform's context for measuring impact and getting that feedback and integrating it back to the platform and constantly making corrections about how you're doing personalization. Then goal-driven design process too, goals of the consumers, goals of the merchants who are selling, and there'll be various. For example, a merchant has a certain goods or product that they just want to give because they have a lot of stock, so they want to discount it. That you need to take into consideration also, which can be not fully aligned with what the consumer is looking for, right? So here's from management science, a typical product or service consumption life cycle. It has 11 specific steps there. And with our product team at MINDBODY, for example, what we have been doing is this. Recommendation or search with personalization, it's not a one-shot deal. It's not, if you observe the whole service consumption life cycle at multiple touch points, when the consumer enters your platform to when she's exiting the platform, multiple touch points like that. Unaware, then they're aware of the product, they become interested. It's called colloquially look to click to book to buy, like that. So that this is an expanded version of that. So there you can color code investigating this. Is there an opportunity here for search, for recommendation, for a personalized recommendation? Can we measure context here? Is there an opportunity for the platform to glean the intent of the consumer implicitly or explicitly? Implicitly meaning you're looking at the click streams, where they are, what they're doing. Explicitly meaning you ask them, you know how the little bubble pops up and then says, hey, would you like books on Python, whatever, right? So that is explicitly asking them. So here are some key advancements toward personalization. If your usual recommender systems are using algorithms that use a user and profile about users, that matrix, and an items matrix, then by convolving them convolution, you're getting a ratings matrix. And based on those ratings, collaborative filter recommender systems, that's how they work, right? So here, in addition to that, you will also need to include context, which is another tensor or a matrix. That is the core idea of how you can context sensitize recommender systems, which are otherwise not sensitive to individual personal context. What are they sensitive to? They're dominated by either the items and their characteristics or the majority people like you who are using the system, but they're not really you. Right? That's how recommender systems work today without personalization. Yeah? So, and this context, it's a dynamic cycle. There is an evolving relationship between context and activity, meaning you start activity, right? Context gives rise to the activity, and activity changes the context dynamically. You can observe yourself this too at any of these digital marketplaces or newspaper sites and so on. You're somewhere, you went there for looking for something else is presented to you, you click on that, and then your intent completely changed. Now you're suddenly looking at shoes. Yes, so and context, that is how it changes, correct? That is what we are talking about here. And then it leads to observable behavior that can be captured implicitly or explicitly as well. So here is some of the data, the types of data that is used towards personalization. By the way, personalization is not just personalization of recommendations. Personalization can be about search, personalizing search, personalizing pricing for you, personalizing the content that is presented to you, personalizing emails that are sent to people, texts that are sent to people, the answer that Alexa gives you, given that you are a particular person. All of that is personalization, not just recommendations only. So basic demographics, financial data about consumers, first-party interactions and second-party derivative data, and third-party behavioral data, like how customers interact with other brands and other platforms, not your platform. Such data. In the age of deep learning, the more data you have, broadly, the better it is. I mean, there is the curse of dimensionality. You have to deal with that, pruning away unnecessary data. But the fact is that the more you know about a system and its entities, the better you are able to model it precisely, right? So challenges are, these are from multiple executives. There is an agency that did this challenge globally in all geographical locations. The technology, how do I actually do this? Lack of technology for personalization. And then can I act on those recommendations? This is the intervention. It's not enough if you got recommendations. How do you act on it to address the issue to your consumer satisfaction? Then not enough team members to execute the work, and linking all this data available to a single consumer's point of view, inaccurate data, right? This you must have heard these anecdotes, at least some company that kept sending weddings related marketing emails to a bunch of people, because its system assumed that because all these people looked at a lot of marriage and wedding related images, they're all getting married, right? But they got upset because that's not the reason why they looked at, and the conjecture is they would like to get married, and then it's not really their wedding. So don't upset them like that. So outdated data, ill-timed data, inaccurate data about propensities of people, imprecise targeting, these are the problems that lead to depersonalization. Yes, and on top of it, ethics. This is John Ugander is a management science professor at Stanford, and his focus is ethics of personalization. He a quote from him: if you're a data scientist building tools for unscrupulous targeting, I strongly urge you to consider the implications of your craft, right? So, and then there is law that is protecting consumers' interests. So like electricity, like any intelligent high energy systems, there is a lot of benefit, but there is a lot of peril also how we use it. So then comes regulation. Here is Bosdag and Timmermans from Netherlands, and they came up with a whole methodology for ethically building personalized systems. Yeah? They focus on three things, that is identities, autonomy, and transparency. So their key points are that people, consumers who you're modeling, they need to be aware of their identities, and you should know that identities would be changing as per context. Then autonomy means the users can present to them, like eButler, they can customize the filters on how they want to be tracked and personalized, and tell them how their identity is changing, give them control of that. Then transparency, what filters is the platform using about them, what criteria is used for building those identities. So this is what they're advocating. So here recommender systems are a separate topic, and that is where personalized systems typically start, right? If within a consumer's journey, product page, checkout, search results, category page, going back and forth, each touch point there is an opportunity for recommendation and personalization. They take into account past browsing behavior, the category best sellers from the product's point of view, high margin items from the seller's point of view, search query information, and complementarity using association rule mining and algorithms like that. If they like these items, then what else might be of interest to them? So that is recommender systems. Now post filtering is one of the ways how you can achieve personalization on top of recommender systems. Post filtering means you do something in addition. You take the results from recommender systems and apply additional algorithms for better personalization. So we will get into that detail. Before I clear just one point, search is not recommendation. Search is not necessarily personalization. In January, there is another event, ValleyML.ai is running, and there I plan a talk that is about search and discoverability. Yeah. So what search is it breaks a query that, see, the user is asking for something of the platform, that is search. The platform is giving information to users proactively, voluntarily, that is recommendation. That's one difference. So search works by breaking down the query and then composing search query in language or similar strings of words, displaying the retrieved information in a ranked order. Broadly, that is how search works. A lot of natural language processing, indexing, query expansion, fuzzy matching, autocorrection. Those are the features of search engines. Recommender systems, when people first started building them, they looked at search and they quickly found out that search is not a good way for building these recommender systems. Personalization applies to both recommender systems and search engines also. The reason why search is not a good idea for recommender systems is the information that it returns to you is either too broad to be useful or really very narrow to be interesting. So novelty is important in recommender systems. So quickly wanted to clear that. The problems recommender systems face are very different from what search engines face. Recommender systems, for example, don't have enough data. Cold start. When you first start, it's great to theoretically know that context is important, person's rankings are important, but you don't have much of that, especially if you're a small business or a medium-sized business. And then too much data, cursive dimensionality, and how am I going to decide which of these is actually useful features for my recommender system? How do I evaluate the recommendations? Will the user tell me how they liked or did not like it? So back to Adamos, Mobashare, but really Adamos and the team here, three types of personalization filters. Now, three types of personalization engines. One is called contextual pre-filtering, the other one is contextual post-filtering, and the third one is contextual modeling or contextual infiltering. We can think of it like that. So the first one is pre-filtering. See that U is all your user data frame, I is the item matrix, C is that context feature set, and R is the ratings. So context C is what is new. Where are you injecting that context as you're building these recommender systems? If you inject it before recommendation, how would you do that? So Dan is a gentleman in his 50s. He's definitely not interested in children's fiction. Just tell the system right off the bat. That is pre-filter. Yes. And then post-filter is let the system float up all of its recommendations, the 20, 30, 40 item recommendations. At the time, right there, you intervene and you say that you use association rule mining, like a priori algorithm, classification rules, or just expert systems, any of the, or even classification engines of a certain kind, to discipline that recommendation with additional context. So that is the second column there, post-filtering, after you build recommendations. Now, contextual modeling is you use all the additional context information that you derived built into the recommendation system proper itself. You could use deep learning to do that, because we do know that as you're collecting additional lot of context related features about consumers and metadata about products and items too. For example, deep learning is capable of taking all of that into account and generate recommendations that would kind of automatically take into account the additional contextual information. This is one way of doing it, and there are other ways also for the in-situ native modeling of recommendations with context. Yes. So here, pre-filtering example, what happens here is take a basic recommender systems data set and model it using item splitting and user splitting. So what you do is you split, in one case you're splitting the users depending on their context. So the same user Dan, if he is at home watching the same movie Titanic with family, he gives a movie 1 rating or 1. And that same Dan, if he's watching the movie at a pub or something with his friends, he gives that rating a very different value. So it is not a single user, you're splitting the user into multiple personas depending on what the context is. That is user splitting. Item splitting is the same item depending on the context, right? I mean, you're in an ecstatic mood, you won something big, you don't mind spending a few $100 extra on your favorite whatever. That is your context there. So that same item is looking very different to you in a different context. So these are the core ideas of item splitting and user splitting. These tables are showing what I just now verbally explained. Yes, item splitting is M1 seen at home, M12 is that movie M1 seen not at home. So tagging it like that. Similarly, user splitting is U1, U for user, saw the movie with family, U1 saw the movie alone or with a friend. So they're giving different ratings. So you're adding additional instances to your data sets. That is about pre-filtering. Yes. And finally, user item splitting. That is doing user splitting first, followed by item splitting. So simply application of item splitting first, splitting the items depending on context, followed by users. And evaluation metrics, as I had previously explained, they start with the metrics of recommender systems, but for context sensitivity, you will need to bring in additional metrics. And how well did the system get the context about the item or the user, that combination correctly? Right. So here are some of the problems with each of these methods. Pre-filtering, where you're disciplining the recommender system's input itself, problems can be over-specification. This is too narrow a context. This person is watching with boyfriend in a movie theater on Saturday and yada, yada, yada. And all of that might be unnecessary. That much feature richness, you do not need it, and that impacts your personalization in a negative way. Then sparsity problem also, not enough training data. So you could engineer your features conceptually all you want, but where are you actually going to get the data for it? So those are the problems with pre-filtering. And with post-filtering, the problems can be, it's too narrow a recommendation. This can become a problem. Like a lady prefers yoga in some place in California, so you've disciplined the recommendations heavily using post filters, so the recommender is always telling you yoga, 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 which is not all that additionally interesting or novel for the particular user, right? So that is where I will move on to an application topic here. I'd like to leave some sufficient time for question and answer. So people figured out, this is relatively a recent science. There is a lot of value here, but what do you actually do? So that is the question I'm posing. If you are a very large government or very resourceful company like Amazon and Walmart and so forth, what would be your design, your architecture for these personalized recommender systems? If you're a smaller company or a mid-sized company with not that many users or stakeholders on your platform, then what would you do? So the thinking is, post-filtering is what might work for the companies at large. So you go ahead and you build your recommender systems as you usually do, and then you apply a post-filtering step. That has better chance of success even when you do not have a whole lot of data to begin with. So here, this is one such paper. There are multiple other works recently reported from the industry. This is from a company called Myntra, and that one is, this is focused on clothing and fashion e-commerce. So what we're showing here is, for a person, a consumer, they want to buy a dress, specifically a shirt. And the top row is the recommendation, the recommended items, without taking personalization into consideration. It is just, okay, she liked these kind of dresses before and various other demographic factors, so the top row is what I'm going to recommend. That's what their platform did. There are millions of items on that platform. It's a fairly good size e-commerce system. So then the second row there is that if they knew additional context that this particular individual likes floral designs in their dresses, then it changes it to that middle row. And if they also knew additionally that they like lighter colors than dark colors, then it is the lower row recommendation. So you can see that whether it's pre-filter or post-filter, personalization does hold the promise of meeting the stakeholders' intent better. And that is a good thing for commerce and for economics, government also. Salespeople, those who are successful, what is known about them is that they listen to you with a lot of empathy. That's one Harvard Business Review had a publication about it. That's about successful salespeople. They listen to you and with empathy. So can we teach the machine, artificial intelligence, how to listen to us with empathy? That is the virtuous cycle of personalization. The opposite of it is depersonalization. Yes, and my point also has been that this is not just for e-commerce. This is for all walks of our economy, of our society. So here, to complete this summary of this work, what they figured out was that, okay, how do we inject personalization into this collaborative filter recommender system? So that is the architecture there. First, you have the product catalog. Then you do your usual non-personalized collaborative filter recommender system. Suppose that pick top 100 styles for this particular individual, and then you do additional algorithms that are focused on user level personalization. That's what that equation there is showing. So specifically, for a given user U and a current product P sub I that they're looking at, develop an affinity score F P sub J conditionally such that the item P sub I is what the user is right now looking at. That score is a linear combination of two things, H P sub J P sub I and G P sub J U. That H P sub J P sub I is similarity of product P sub J with the given product P sub I, meaning you're looking at all the other products that are similar to this product. You are doing that. That is non-personalized part of the recommendation. Plus P sub J U is the personalized part, matching the user's taste. Taste is the context profile, the personal user profile, and then they're using a hyperparameter alpha to balance and discipline the final recommendation between the two approaches. And they report that the results were pretty satisfying on that particular platform. For want of time, that needed to be my last slide. So I'm bringing it back as a reminder before we open this up for discussion that good personalized systems pay attention to metrics of impact. And how are you? You're shouting out to your consumer. How is that being received? And how do you engineer formal metrics for that? How do you feed back that information back into the system and integrate with the platform? And then finally, goals-driven design. So a couple of things quickly about goals. One, product itself is being designed using personalization. You see, clothing is an example. Tommy Hilfiger, companies like that, they take all these personalized inputs not to give you a recommendation of already built product, but go back and build that product for you. You see, Stitch Fix is an example, eyeglass companies, all of that. So personalizing product. And another one is there are fascinating connects to the world of arts and all of that. For suppose I like W.H. Auden's poetry. Auden is no more. I'd love it if somebody discovers some cache of Auden poems someday. I doubt it, but they're teaching machines how to write poetry. This is happening. Can the machine write an Auden poem for me? That would be a personalization of literature for me. Yes. So it veers into the sublime like that. So that's why this science is exciting to people like us, engineers and scientists. On that note, thank you for this opportunity. I'll pause my talk there. Any questions, discussion, that'd be lovely. Thank you very much.